I didn't think I could get a job which I would want. Especially I was looking into like robotics. Tech team has no influence over what the company should do. So I realized that maybe I should try to figure out why companies doing that when it doesn't make sense to me. So I applied.
Still got into Harvard. That's really great.
It's funny that this is the only school I got into.
Hey Gaurav, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really excited for this particular video where we're going to be talking about your journey, everything from your early undergraduate days, your career, your masters, and getting into Harvard Business School eventually, which is considered to be like a dream for a lot of Indian students. So yeah, thank you so much, for doing this. So we'll start off with your undergraduate days at NIT Trichy. So the previous conversation that we had, like you mentioned that you were very active in the extracurricular space. You were pretty active in the quiz. You've won a lot of quizzes during your undergraduate days and even your school. You were the head of like a department symposium. So what were your biggest lessons being a part of like all of these extracurricular activities? And I would love to know till date, as being a part of all of these extra activities, did it really help you?
It does. Like NSS was really helpful. So first of all, realizing the problems we have in the society. So in the first year, we went to this orphanage. I think it's called Don Bosco. And there people were just happy to see me for some reason. So like I have a picture in which like 20 children were just jumping on me. And so it's just like how like people complain about how little they have and how much hard their life is. But then you'll find someone whose life is harder than you. So that's like the biggest lesson in your life. In terms of like sports and curriculum, academic stuff, like it's important to know how to handle people and how to handle and lead teams. And it was always fun. Like you would think that people like teams are made of humans, but all humans come with different characteristics, and you need to know which ones are easy to tap into and which ones are harder, and how do you manage them. It's just a good management lesson, which you don't realize then, but then once you start growing up, you realize it.
Yeah, I've got this advice a lot. Like your ability to influence people, if you're able to learn that particular skill, it goes a long way in your career. That's a great answer. So, moving on, let's touch base about like academics. So I would love to know, so you pursued your BTech degree from instrumentation and control engineering, right? So I would love to know whether that's something that you picked out of interest, or initially was it just like forced on you because of your JEE rank, because that's usually the case. But you eventually went on to become like a control engineer, right? Your first job was actually a control engineer. So how did you actually fall in love with the subject?
Honestly, I did not. It's just that I think a lot of people plan a lot of things like they want to be this in 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. I mostly take like 1 or 2 years at a time. So like this is what I am interested right now. So once I got into instrumentation and control engineering, I started looking into like what are my best options. Should I get into like electronic side of things, or should I get into control side of things? Fortunately, I really like the control part of it, like all the state estimation. I was really good with linear algebra, mathematics and all. So, and then I got into this program at IIT Gandhinagar, which was a summer internship. And there I met a professor who was a US return. He went to U of Michigan, actually. So he did his PhD from U of Michigan. So he got me involved into a project which was about Parkinson's disease and how we could use control systems modeling. And that project was really successful. And we wrote a paper. There was an international conference. We have a patent on it. So I think that changed my life, because that professor was like, okay, I can send you to Michigan. So you should definitely do grad school because you have a research site. And I also fell in love with like control engineering, because control can be used. He taught me about like financial modeling using control systems. He taught me about Parkinson's disease using control systems. So there are like so many examples. The core example which we are taught in NIT, which is like process control in like factories in cements, which didn't ever excite me, but the other ones like robotics and self-driving cars, those excited me. So that is where I like, okay, this is the field I can get into, and I would like to do a research MS.
That's great. So why hires over placements? Because you made a decision that you wanted to get into control engineering. You could have got a job immediately, because this is a very important question for a lot of fourth years right now who are back on college, where they have to make this very important decision. So how did you make that call?
Honestly, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have been to NIT, and I think things have changed a lot in like 6 years, like 2014, 2020. But when I was there, there was not an actual learning involved. So it's mostly about like, these are the books, these are the last year papers. Some of the questions may be from last year papers, some may not be. And then it's mostly about like rote learning. And also, I think we were not mature enough. So we thought, like, if I can go back in time, I probably can do better. But at that point in time, I didn't find interesting like most of the process control analytics stuff. So I didn't think I could get a job which I would want. Especially I was looking into like robotics, and like modern robotics involve like humanoid and all stuff. So that was not possible. Although my parents were like, you should get a job. And I did sit in like a couple of companies. I remember one incident in BPCL. So they were asking me interview questions, and they asked me, like, they were forcing me, would you bribe to government official to get this done? And I said no like 100 times, and they would still keep pushing me. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll give bribe. And they're like, okay, get out. So that was the only job which I took seriously, like I applied for, and some of my great friends are in BPCL right now. So, and at that point in time, I was like, okay, I should apply for MS only because I was more placed. So compared to most other students, at least in my batch, I was the only one with a research paper and a patent pending. So if someone who had a good chance to get a research position was me. Although my GPA was like 8. So that was always tricky, but yeah. I thought that
so
companies and what companies I can get and what positions I can get in research.
Got it. So you mentioned that your CGPA was 8. So if you were to look back, how important do you think academics are or grades are from your undergraduate days?
Yeah, I don't think that's that important. Honestly, I mean, no disrespect to people who got like 9.5, and I think they have done amazing things. One of our batch topper, she went to Stanford, did some Stanford AI. She's in Google right now.
That's great.
Yeah, so a lot of people have done great things with their high GPA, but I know a lot of like 6-pointers who are also doing amazing things. So in retrospect, it doesn't matter a lot. And like a lot of people think that at the end of your undergrad, this is your life. You are not going to do anything more, and this is what will determine the rest of your life. But there are so many things. Like, you are joining Bain, you probably will do something else, and then you move on. And then no one will ever ask about your NIT grade.
That's definitely true. So, Gaurav, you immediately after your undergraduate, you went to University of Michigan and you pursued your master's in electrical and computer engineering. And after that, you joined as a control engineer. And then after a couple of years, you went and worked with Ford in their autonomous vehicles division. So your early career days, so it's a very selfish question to be honest. I'd love to know, what are the biggest mistakes that you made during that particular period?
That's a good question, actually. I think let's talk about like U of Michigan days. So I thought I would go and do a PhD there, but I wasn't very proactive about it. So I had an education loan, and I was trying to work like multiple jobs so that I can support my education. And I was getting some funding from the department. So I think prioritizing part-time work over my research work wasn't a good idea because I wasn't thinking long-term. So that's something you have to think about. Like, maybe you would think like money is more important, and it probably is because you probably don't have any money. So at that point in time, I was struggling with money. So I did prioritize money over research, and I ended up not doing PhD because I thought that I needed to pay back my loan. And in retrospect, I probably could have done PhD and I would have been fine also, but it didn't affect me also. So that's something like you need to get your priorities right. What is more important in short and long term? And some people like they can't figure out the long term. Second mistake is choosing a wrong job. So like I joined as a base engineer at ZF, and it wasn't much of a wrong job. It was more of like I was so bad at what I wanted, I didn't know. So I was looking into jobs. I got into this company, Tesla, which was paying less at that point of time compared to like the company which were paying in Michigan. So Tesla was known for like their culture on making people work harder and paying less. And California is very expensive. So here I could get a job which would pay something similar, but in Michigan, so low cost living area. So I chose that one. And the second thing is that then I realized that some of my friends got the same job which I got, but they negotiate better. So they got like higher salary. So yeah, there is always an opportunity to negotiate. That is something which I learned later. And another thing which I learned later was a lot of people want to help you. But if you don't ask, they will never know. So in the beginning, I was trying to do most of my stuff by myself and trying to figure out. And I was very ashamed that I couldn't figure it out and I can't ask for help. But then I realized that I can just ask for help and people will be very happy to. And it just makes you more memorable and you can achieve a lot if you just ask for help. So I think
that's true.
When I moved to Ford, that is what helped me in my Ford career a lot. And I made quick progress there. Yeah.
That's great.
And my Ford job was not in controls engineering. So it was machine learning engineering.
So you mentioned that you joined Ford as a machine learning engineer, but like after certain years, I noticed that you kind of switched the business front, like in the strategy, the planning and everything, right? So why did you make that switch?
It's a good point. So I got into machine learning engineer role at Ford, and my boss was really good. So his name was Gent Pistorius. He's retired now. He was awesome that he gave me so much leeway that I could do anything I wanted. And then over time, I realized that most of my impact, so like we filed a lot of patents, we did a lot of competitions, and we were like #1 ranked algorithms. So it was very hardcore science. And even though you are doing all these good work, a lot of them are not going to be part of production. And the tech team has no influence over what the company should do. So I realized that maybe I should try to figure out why company is doing that when it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm an engineer. I'm like on this side of things. I'm like, why would company do that? And why would CEO talk about deep learning when he doesn't know anything about it? So I talked to, and I had developed like good influence with my company's tech team. So like the CTO, and I told them that, hey, I want to be a business leader, and I hopefully can be a good CEO of companies like Ford or maybe someone else. But I couldn't be able to do that unless I understand the business reasons. So the CTO said, okay, go try this one. And it was still challenging. Like I had no idea about how Excel worked and PowerPoint worked. But I started talking to a lot of people on the business side, and then I realized that there's actually rationale behind everything. And people have like financial modeling and projections. And that is why the tech team and business team didn't align much. And the business team also didn't have any technical capabilities. So there was no engineer, like mostly people were from finance background. So it was good that I was there because we could talk about why this project makes sense, what this project does. And I would also tell to tech team, oh, you can't spend $100,000 to make a project which you can't sell for more than $20,000. So like research, you can get overboard. Like I'll get the biggest sensor. And if there's no use case, there's no point. So I think it was a good experience for me and for the company also that we could align the business and the tech team that these are the projects worth doing, these are projects not worth doing. And I think that also got me into HBS because with just technical background, I could not have got into HBS.
That's great. That actually brings me to my next question. With a steady flow of income, with a really, really good job at a really good company, why did you pursue or decide to do an MBA? Again, this is a very selfish question because, I'm at this stage right now where the whole world is literally screaming at me, from my parents to my friends, peers, my colleagues, everyone. They're like, you have to do an MBA to, climb up the corporate ladder. So how did you make that decision? And do you really think an MBA is valuable?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. So one thing was like my move from tech to business team was supposed to last 1 year long. And I couldn't go back to tech. Like I couldn't be a programmer or machine learning engineer because I now had understood like these are things I needed to manage more projects instead of doing more projects on my own. And at that point in time, like US visas are required that you do the role which you have studied for. So like your MS has to tie with your roles and responsibilities. So I needed to do an MBA if I wanted to do a more businessy role. That was one reason. The second thing was we have saved a lot. Like my wife was working for Ford. We met at U of Michigan and we were doing like similar roles. So we have saved a lot. And my wife was confident she could get a job in like different cities also if need to be. So it seemed like a good opportunity. And I was looking into the schools where the scholarships are really high. So like Harvard, Chicago, Wharton, the scholarships are really high. So I thought I could, there's obviously an opportunity cost. Like you could make money instead of losing money.
Yeah.
But I realized that this is probably a step back to go like 3 steps further. And that is why I chose to apply for MBA. And it was a very short decision. Like I decided that I should do an MBA in May, wrote GMAT in July, so like 1 month training, and then we applied in September. So like May to September, so like 4 months. And it's not recommended, but yeah. So I applied.
Still got into Harvard. That's really great.
It's funny that this is the only school I got into.
Wow, okay. What are the other schools that you applied for?
Chicago and Wharton. Chicago, Booth and Wharton.
Okay, got it. So that's definitely a great answer. Another interesting question is, like according to you, who shouldn't apply for an MBA? Like what kind of people should not at all apply for a B school and probably just do something else?
That's a tough question. Honestly, if you do not have ambitions to do, like a lot of people, there are like good reasons for it. Like a lot of people don't want to go for like higher roles or change companies frequently. And the reason being is that the higher you go, the harder you have to work. Then you are away most of the time from your family, you're working long hours. So it depends on what you want with your life. And if you want like things much better than what you have currently, I think MBA is good. The second reason when one should do an MBA is try to figure out what they want with their life. So a lot of people come to MBA because at MBAs, like in MS, you're talking about like, oh, these are the equations, how to solve them. In MBA, I don't know what I'm made of, and I don't know what drives me and what inspires me, and I need some time to figure it out. And believe me, you won't believe it, but like half of the students at HBS have no idea on what they want to do, like post MBA, and they are here trying to fix it. So they know that they are amazing, and they know that they can do good in anything they put their hearts into. But what is worth doing for them? And it's not only about money; it's also about like, is non-profit good for me? Should I get into government? Can I become a state senator? Can I try for like US president in 20 years? So I think that is what makes business school unique, is that it's mostly about learning about yourself than learning about business.
That's a very, very interesting perspective. But you know what? Like, there's this very bad impression about, like, I wouldn't call it bad, but there's this impression about these schools that when you're applying for them, you need to have like complete clarity about like what you want to do immediately after your B school, because you need to write all of these essays and you need to show that you have like so much clarity, right? So is that really the case? And what does like all of these B schools, or in fact Harvard, look for in an ideal candidate? Because the application process is like fairly straightforward. You have all of these essays, different things that you'll have to fill, letter of recommendations, and interviews finally, right?
Yeah.
So what does Harvard look for in an ideal candidate?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think not a lot of people do that. And I realized it because I was helped by a Harvard Business School student. So there was this guy who was going to HBS, and I messaged him that, can I talk to you? And he's like, oh, sure. And he helped me a lot. So I think one thing I learned that what Harvard is looking for is like you need to summarize your life so far in 3 sentences. One is, these are things I have done so far. So like my life, I did undergrad, I have done these roles, and I'm interested in these things. Second thing is what do you want to get out of this MBA? And what Harvard and most other top business schools are looking for is not like what you will be doing right away, like right after MBA. They want to know what, like Harry Potter, like these are your deepest desires, like the mirror that shows your life. So like what exactly do you want in 20 years? And then you can talk about like, oh, you know what, maybe US president drives me, like being a US president drives me, or I want to do something for my community, maybe start a school, or maybe I just want to lead a Fortune 500 company. I could be a CEO or CTO. Or I want to start my own company, or I want to be an investor long term. So you think about like those 20 years goals. And the third sentence is, how would Harvard help you or an MBA help you get there? So this is where like, okay, after an MBA, I will do this, and then 5 years, I will change to this, and then 10 years after, I will do this. So these are the 3 things like most business schools ask for. And yes, you are right. Like most people do not know like the clarity. And honestly, like in most essays, you have to pretend like, oh, I have known since like 5 years of age that this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I have done, and like I'm on my, and these are 20 years later things. But I can't say about everyone else, but like for me, I haven't planned anything. I take 2 or 3 years in advance, like, okay, this job looks interesting, I'll do it. And then 6 months later, I want to do machine learning. Then I moved to a different one. Then 2 years later, I was like, I don't want to be an engineer, I want to be in business. So it doesn't, it's not planned at all. But when you're writing all your essay, you have to look back, and there is a reason why you're doing these things. So it's something driving you. You may not notice it in the moment, but when you look back, there's something which is driving you to do these things, and there is a pattern. And the person who uncovers all these patterns gets into the top business. And that is what like Harvard is looking for. So even though no one has planned it, you need to know what is driving you, and there's reason. And if you can convey to Harvard, and then if you understand like this is my past behavior, then you can forecast it to like this is probably going to be my future behavior.
Yeah.
And Harvard bets on that. And Harvard and all the B schools are like, they're probably not going to change the life you have already. It's mostly they're putting bet on like horses which are going to win anyway.